Alright, what's good, YouTube? I'm back. It's your boy Breezy. So the title of this video is The Current State of Affairs of Society and Why We're Cooked. So I was sitting back just kind of thinking about, like, where is Gen Z or just anybody born from 1995 forward? Like, what are we looking at for the next, like, 20 years or so? So I really just started sitting back and thinking, from the housing market to the economy to people having children, people getting married, the malls are empty and dead. It feels like society's cooked. I'm not gonna lie to you. So the first thing I really thought about was the housing situation. So, in my last video, I talked about how in the 80s and 90s, you could work a regular job in a call center, you could work at a grocery store, any regular job just like that. And it was no problem for you to get a one-bedroom apartment, have you a nice car, pay a car note, and you'd be able to live comfortably. But currently here as we sit in 2026, it's just really not possible. You feel me? I'm working a full-time and a part-time job, but it's really just still not even enough money for me to have my own space. And I do live in the most expensive place in the world in LA and California, but back in the early 2000s, the late 90s, and so on and so forth, that wasn't really an issue. Like my grandfather, for example, moved here and he worked at a liquor store. He still had him a house, and my grandmother worked in a daycare and she owned her own daycare, and she owned a house. But as I'm looking at all the people around my age, so 25, 26, going into their early 30s, even nurses I know, they're still not making enough money to really do anything. So when you start there with the housing situation, that trickles down to having children. So I just got lucky, and God put it in the plans for me to have a child at 20 years old. And a bit of a miracle, that it did happen the way it did, and everything is cool. But as I look around, that trickles down into having a long-term relationship. And with the introduction of social media, all the different options and or perceived options people think that they have, it just seems like as the years continue to pass by, no one's going to be in a perfect situation to have a child and to have like a sustaining long-term relationship or like marriage. I look at from celebrities to basketball players to regular people like myself, and it's like I don't see anyone getting married. I don't see anyone being in a perfect spot to have a child, because when you have a child, you want a lot of things to go correctly, right? So you need certain things to align. So you need to be with the person that you really like, that you really enjoy, so that there's no issues down the line in the future. Someone that you get along with. You need a place to stay. You need a very a lucrative position that can allow you to take care of yourself, your family, and that child. But when you look at the state of the economy, as I said, anyone working a regular job, the jobs that make the world go round, from people that run restaurants, to people that run hotels, people in the entertainment industry, and more, no one's breaking enough bread for people to feel comfortable enough to have a child. So what is that going to look like as we continue? And then with the addition of artificial intelligence taking over people's jobs, I'm already seeing videos on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram of, for example, like pallets and forklift drivers. They have new technology that can do it by themselves. So pretty soon, the people that's working in Amazon warehouses and longshoremen and things like that, they're not going to have any type of job. So when you don't have money, you don't have a place to stay, you can't move out, you don't feel comfortable, you're not going to have a kid. It's just simple as that. So what is the population going to look like as we move into 2030, into 2040? Like, are we just going to have a generation of super old parents? I feel like there needs to be a great reset. Something needs to happen where we can actually afford to live and afford to have the American dream. Because right now it feels like the American dream is cooked. In my last video, I talked about how, I'm working my dream job and I have another one. And I just still feel like I'm not doing enough. And it just seems like the only way to really get ahead where we're at right now in society is for you to add some type of value to the market, whether that be through some type of trade, some type of creative outlet, whether that's YouTube, whether that's writing, whether that's some type of entertainment, and you having some type of business or products that can keep you out of the rat race. Because right now, $25 an hour isn't enough, $30 an hour isn't enough, $40 an hour is enough. I have a friend who's a nurse, and she told me that she's making about 50 something, an hour, and she still feels like it's not enough, and she's still, um, you know, in a place like with her parents. So it really just seems like everything is cooked. And then once you get into like the dating market and things like that, it just seems like it's a lot of like shallow and artificial relationships that's really happening. People aren't really connecting on like a deep level because of the perceived the options that they feel that they have. So when you put all these things together, from the housing market, the economy, no children, no marriages, people not connecting, and if they are connecting, it's just on the ego to ego level. People aren't really connecting to really have like real love, like as Mary J would say, or like a love that could really sustain and push society forward. It's like, what's gonna happen next? Because when I look at like my parents and things like that, they grew up in a better time where everybody was kind of like comfortable, everybody had money, everything was aligned for everyone in the 90s and the late 80s to start a family, to have homes. The government put in programs where you can first time home buyers, and apartments were cheap. You could be in Long Beach, you could be in LA, and you would still be good, you still cool. And I just don't see that happening. So if there's not some type of great reset that happens, we're going to be in a society where AI is running all the jobs. People are poor, and homelessness continue to go up. People aren't comfortable enough to have any children. So what's the next generation going to look like? Like the people that my son ends up growing with. Because I don't see many young parents. I'm 25. My son's mom, she'll be 26 soon. But Gen Z, we're getting older and older. If you were born in 2000, you'll be 26 this year. So it's moving to, are things going to change by 2040? Are things going to change by 2035? Are we going to have a whole bunch of parents that are just in their 40s and 50s? And it seems like there's going to be like a big gap, in children being born to people around my age. It seems like the people that's still kind of flourishing are like some of the older adults, in their late 40s, early 50s, or like, mid to late 30s. So it's just something I've really been observing and really just sitting back and thinking about. And I just feel like, things need to change, or society is headed in the completely wrong direction. So just a couple of my thoughts on society and where we're at right now. My advice would just be, I don't know. Like I just feel like we're cooked. We're cooked from dating to everything else. So, I know the Most High has a plan. So, hopefully things change pretty soon in the future. But just a couple of my thoughts on society and what I'm seeing in the world today. And God's willing, we'll be heading in a better direction soon. It's your boy Breezy. I'm out.